Right, welcome to Trade of the Week with me, Zinati Guma. Today, Loyiso Mpeta, Hedge Fund Manager at Unum Capital, joins us for a technical analysis on some of the JSE's gold stocks. Thank you so much for your time, Loyiso. Of course, at this point, it seems that gold is on everybody's mouth. So we're putting a spotlight on gold today, and it's been quite interesting to see the rise of that gold price, but also the gold miners that we have here on the JSE really is shining bright like a diamond. Or maybe I shouldn't say shining bright like a diamond, because diamonds have actually been quite weak in terms of demand. But really just a gold proving to really be a safe haven, the safe haven that people buy it for. So just talk to me about the kind of environment that we're seeing right now. Is it supportive of the upward trajectory that we have seen in the gold price?
Yeah, I think over the last year or two, we've constantly seen your big banks revising their gold price up and up. Primary drivers have really been the geopolitical tensions, from Russia, Ukraine spilling over to the Hamas, Israel. And then we started to see central banks sort of pivoting and increasing interest rates. We've seen the volatility created by the US election. So there's been quite a number of fundamental drivers in terms of what supports the gold price. So I think the last 2 years has really been a good period for gold. And again, like you say, to prove itself as a safe haven.
It's going to be quite interesting. I mean, as you talk about geopolitical tensions, we know that is not going away anytime soon. But maybe thinking that there might be some relief on the Ukraine-Russia side, but we will, of course, see what happens in those peace talks that are taking place in Saudi Arabia. Let's drill into the gold counters on the JSE. Let's actually start off with Anglo Gold Ashanti. It has a secondary listing on the JSE at this point, right? And looking at it being one of the counters that have experienced the most upside on the JSE. What's happening there on a technical level?
Yeah, so before we dive specifically into Anglo Gold, just to give a bird's eye view on general performance across all 5 counters over the last year, we can see there's really been 3 standout performers: Pan-African Resources, Harmony, and Anglo Gold. And the 2 laggards have been DRD and Goldfields. So there's actually quite an interesting thing that I'm seeing with regards to the larger trends in the gold stocks. And that is, when you look at them from an Elliott wave perspective, instead of tracing out the traditional 5-wave advance, they tend to move in a cycle of 3 waves, ABC, ABC. So what I'm seeing from Anglo Gold Ashanti, if you look from March 2020, after that COVID-19 sell-off, made an all-time high and then had this very strong 3-wave bear market, which bottomed in September of 2022. And what we've seen then has been a very strong advance back towards this previous all-time high. And how I'm looking at this advance is as a textbook 5-wave advance for wave a strong pullback for wave B, and this wave C has unfolded in a more complex manner. Waves 1, 2, wave 3 unfolding in 5 waves as well. A very strong pullback for wave 4 and an advance for wave 5. So I'm asking myself, is this the peak of the C wave? Because when I look at it from a broader perspective, you can see that price is just short of this 2020 all-time high. And if this is the peak, then this would give us another phenomena, which is a double top. But from a sort of this 3-wave ABC structure that I'm looking at, it does look as if it's if not topped yet, very, very close to the top. So that is pretty much going to be the theme for all these gold counters. Have they topped? Are you going to see cyclical corrections? And you can see how strong these pullbacks can be. So it's all about locking in profits if you already are in the trade. And if you're not, probably a bit too late to try and chase it now. And also when you look at it from a correlation perspective, we can see Anglo Gold Ashanti especially from 2023, has had a very, very strong, consistent correlation with the gold price. And only until recently, around September last year, did this correlation sort of taper off. So this upper boundary is one, which means very, very strong. So you can see for a very long period, that correlation coefficient, you can say almost around 0.8, 0.9. So very, very strong correlation to the gold price.
All right. Yeah, quite interesting because as you say, the question is, have they reached the top? And a lot of our viewers have actually been asking if they should short gold and those gold miners or if they should take some profits off of the table. So that remains to be seen. But also I can imagine that people who are not already in these counters or in gold or gold ETFs are probably kicking themselves considering just how much we've seen the gold price and those gold shares climb. Let's go into DRD Gold. I do note that it is one of the counters that have gained the least. Quite interesting because I guess maybe it also brings in that argument that it's not just the gold price that they thrive off of, but they also trade on the fundamentals, the operations of the company. Yeah, what's that look like?
Yeah, and 100% on that. And this is why I'll say, when you look at these counters from a fundamental perspective, very, very different in terms of their operations. DRD, which is very surprising to me because they are a pure surface operation. So you would expect cheaper
less risk.
Operating cost, less risk, lower all-in sustaining costs. But that hasn't been the case. So again, it's all about operational efficiency over and above the gold price. So what am I seeing in DRD? Again, just starting with that bottom in March 2020, very, very strong advance to 29 Rand 50, a very strong sell-off to 8 Rand 64, which is very choppy. I don't really have a wave count for this sell-off, but what I did notice was a very clear 5-wave advance for what I had labeled wave A. Now, I'm a bit tentative to label what has transpired from this wave A peak because after this very strong sell-off, I would then label this as wave B. But this advance, you can see how weak and shallow it has been relative to the prior peak at wave A. So I'm a bit tentative in labeling DRD going forward. And also when you look at the correlation with the gold price, you can see how from, say, around October 2024, there has been such a strong disconnection between DRD and the gold price. So we can see that the stock didn't take advantage of the very, very strong gold price. So that tells me that there must be something wrong with the company from a fundamental perspective, which is again why it's so important to also have a very, very strong understanding of the operations of the business and what is going on there. So again, just goes to show that all our JSE stocks don't always move in tandem. The stocks themselves can have low correlation relative to each other, likewise relative to the gold price. So yeah, DRD struggling, and there has to be some deeper research and analysis into the operations to sort of understand what is really going on there. But yeah, we can see how it's severely disconnected from the gold price.
It really brings about also the importance of being able to stock pick. Let's go to another laggard then, that has been Gold Fields. I do know that there have been just a number of factors that investors have been looking at with Gold Fields besides the gold price. I think just a few years ago it was the corporate M&A activity. And then also I do remember at some point, I think it was last year, they had pretty high costs and operationally they weren't doing so well. So it is no surprise to me that it is a laggard. How does that chart look like?
Yeah, another bit of a concerning one. When you look at it from this perspective, it looks like, well, you can say the trend has been upwards, but it's also a question of at what rate is the stock going up as well. And you can see how from, say, around June of 2023, the stock has really just been chopping up and down. Very, very poor trend. Net going up, but at a very, very low progressive rate. And again, when I look at it from a wave perspective, I don't have very clear-cut wave structures besides these simple ABC zigzags that I'm seeing here. But here it's just a mess. I didn't even try to label this here. And also what's concerning with Goldfields, if you look at it from a historical perspective, there was this peak here and then this new high, but not too much higher from this previous peak. So this can also be viewed as a double top. We saw a strong sell-off thereafter. Likewise here, even though the stock has made a new all-time high, it doesn't seem to be pushing too much above this previous peak here. So again, still too early to call it a double top. But just looking at how the market has advanced over the last year or so, it's been very, very lethargic. So that shows that even though the stock is net going up, there's no momentum, there's no real volume. It's just really just struggling along, but continuing to make those highs. And also when you look at it from a correlation perspective to the gold price, it had a strong correlation, but if you look at it from, say, September 2023, it did start to disconnect and eventually fall off. So it hasn't taken advantage of this very, very strong momentum that we've seen, say, from September 2023. So again, very important to note again that correlations are fixed, correlations change, and some stocks react differently to the underlying. Hence, there's variation in terms of the correlation coefficients between the counters. But yeah, Goldfields still making highs, but I think they could have done better. I'm sure when a management looks at the chart, looks at the gold price, they'll say, how could our operations have been more efficient to take advantage of the gold price? So I think there's a missed opportunity there for Goldfields.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at the other side of the coin, because there is a gold miner that has fired on all cylinders. That is Harmony Gold, the biggest gainer there. Of course, when they do come out with their results, they talk about spectacular, excellent, all these shiny words, and you see it coming through in the numbers as well, and being able to take advantage of that gold price. Just talk us through that chart.
Yeah, no, stellar performance by Harmony indeed. So again, just going back to March 2020, made this peak strong, not as strong as the others in terms of this correction. Again, just shows how resilient the stock is relative to its peers, even in a bear market. And what we've seen from September 2022 has been nothing short of spectacular, really. And you can see how much higher this new peak is relative to the 2020 peak, whereas Anglo Gold is at that peak. DRD is far below that peak. Goldfields above that peak, but not by much. But you can see how significant Harmony has performed relative to its 2020 peak. So when I look at this advance, I see it as a very, very, so this correction first, WXY, and looking at the advance, I'm seeing it as an extended impulse and also forming a zigzag. So I've got this wave 1, wave 2, and then this wave 3 unfolded in a very complex 5-wave advance as well. And then we had a correction for wave 4 and advance for wave 5 for wave A. I'm looking at this correction for wave B, and you can see how shallow this correction is compared to the, its peers. How deep those corrections were. Again, testament to the resilience of the stock. So the question again is this all of wave C, or is this maybe part of a much bigger trend? So this is again the question where I'm asking myself, or the juncture where I'm asking myself, is this the peak, or are we going to see more upside? Now we can see with Harmony, if this is all of wave C, it would be very small in relation to wave A. But I have seen situations from an Elliott wave perspective where there's an abnormal relationship between wave A and wave C. So it can happen. But again, I think the key level to watch here is this low of wave B, which is at around 150 Rand. If price holds above here and continues to make a new high, I think that will be the cue that perhaps gold still has some room to run. So the leaders in terms of this market really from this wave perspective is Anglo Gold and Harmony. But we'll also see with PEN that it also has some qualities which are looking good. And we can see here how strong the correlation has been between gold and Harmony since 2023, almost 0.9 to 1, and only just recently had a bit of a disconnect, but starting to push up again. So yeah, stellar performance all around by Harmony.
Let's go into Pan-African, the last one. They recently came out with numbers. It was last week, and it's quite interesting because in the 2 days that they posted their trading statement and the results, that stock took quite a knocker. But somebody brought things into perspective for me, that as much as those 2 days were difficult, they weren't really that difficult, looking at the whole picture of the upside that we've seen on Pan-African resources. Just show us that graph.
Yeah, so PEN is actually an interesting one because for a long time when I started covering gold stocks here, I tended to sort of not cover Pan-African because the market didn't seem to really care much about it. But recently, over the last year or so, we've seen investors really starting to pile into the stock. So from this March 2023 low, I did emphasize previously of this double bottom here, and what we've seen has really been a strong rally. So again, from a wave perspective, a simple wave 1, 2, strong rally for wave 3. This could be viewed as wave 4, though it is relatively shallow. And the question is, this small advance, is it all of wave 5 at 984? So very, very strong performance by Pan-African Resources. And likewise, we can see how strong the stock has been when compared with the gold price. I mean, we can see here from around May 2024, almost on par with the gold price. So very, very strong performance by Pan-African Resources. So again, the theme is pretty consistent here as far as the outperformers are concerned. And the question is, can we anticipate a correction at least in the short to medium term? And for me, it wouldn't really be a surprise because these gold stocks have really run hot, and they've the three have performed. The other two have been the laggards. And again, if we do get a correction in gold and the gold stocks themselves, I would expect the poor performers to be the most severely impacted by a correction because they are the weakest ones. So whenever you see a correction, they would tend to do the worst in a correction. But yeah, it's still early to say that a top is in, but a short-term correction at least can be expected, and it shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, they've really run.
Well, thank you so much, Loyiso, for taking us through the technical dynamics of the yellow metal and also the miners attached to it. That was Unum Capital's Loyiso Mpeta. That is all for this week's segment, but do stay tuned for lots more coming up right here on Business Day TV.